And we welcome John Medina coming to us, integral part of the Coptic Fellowship. And throughout over 30 years of traveling, John has been mentored by an Essene rabbi, has received teachings and insights from gifted savants in several different states, and has completed numerous courses in esoteric sciences and Christian pastoral certificates. In addition to having his own library on such topics, he has found there is a shortcut to opening the inner kingdom, which is of the teachings of the book of the Zohar. And that is a book of great mystical power and wisdom that the reader will find direct communication to God. It is universally recognized in a definitive work of the Kabbalah, and is also so much more. It's a wellspring of spiritual energy, a fountainhead of metaphysical power, and not only reveals and explains, but literally brings blessings, protection, and well-being into the lives of all those who read it and pursues its sacred texts. Interesting topic tonight. John's always full of new insights and mystery, and it's the Cave of Macpalla, I think is how you pronounce it. Please correct me as you get into it, John.
Right, yeah, your pronunciation was close enough, Michael. Cave of Macpalla. You know, there are sacred sites around the planet. Amongst Catholics, they call them shrines. And they believe that if they're tuned in to a particular saint, that they visit the shrine and they receive a blessing. You know, there are other places on the planet where you have extremely high energy coming in. One of them is Sedona, Arizona, where I used to live. And when you have a place like Sedona where over 200 medicine men would come 500 miles away on horseback or on foot to meet with each other at one central location, being Sedona, Arizona, you wonder why they would pick that particular town. Well, it was because of the energies there. The Cave of Macpalla is the second most sacred site on planet Earth to Judaism. It's a real place. And you can go to the Cave of Macpalla, and the stories are that the patriarchs of the faith, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and each of their wives are in the Cave of Macpalla. Their bodies in the Cave of Macpalla have not decomposed. So you have some of these teachings that bring into reality what can be done when elevated souls occupy human bodies and learn how to overcome physical restrictions. And this is what the Essenes did. They had the teachings, and if they had the discipline and they pursued the lifestyle that wasn't self-serving, then they began to master the physical attributes of their own bodies, and many times the physical attributes of what was occurring around them. So when I was making one of the biggest journeys in my life, and I moved from Michigan to San Diego, California, or just north of there, to a little town called Escondido, which in Spanish means hidden valley. This is where Dr. Bronner was, the Essene rabbi that I lived with for 3.5 years, the multi-millionaire who built the soap empire known as Dr. Bronner's Magic Soap. So he has the pure Castile soap that sells around the world. And I would listen to his stories on a daily basis, on a nightly basis, whatever he wanted to share that was handed down, from his father and his mother, who were, sadly enough, taken out at Auschwitz. So he lost both of his parents in Auschwitz, and then he moved to New York, and from New York began to build his soap empire, and then made his way to Southern California, where he believed he had the most ideal climate on planet Earth, and basically is 65-degree nights and 86-degree days. And then the song comes in, "It never rains in Southern California." Yeah, that's pretty much true. So he would hand me these stories down, and one of the stories on the Cave of Macpalla is that if you're worthy and you're an elevated being, that's where the entrance to the Garden of Eden is located. So before you pass to the entrance to the Garden of Eden, at the end of the cave of Macpalla, you have to, of course, pass Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, and Leah. Rachel is not in there, who was the second wife of Jacob, who later became Israel and had 12 sons who became the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, well, if you go through the cave of Macpalla and you now see these bodies that have not decomposed, you see that the story goes that they're laid face up, but the partner, the spouse, is on the floor of the cave, and the spouse is laying with her head across from her spouse, and so they're head to head. Why this is, I don't know. There's of course a very deep reason for it. And then you have head to head. You have Isaac with Rebecca, women on one side of the cave, men on the other, and then you have Jacob with Leah. They're laying head to head, face up. Well, when you come through some of the Catholic teachings, you see that there are Catholic saints who are actually buried in glass coffins that are on display, and their bodies have not decomposed either. So why is it their bodies are not decomposing? What is so special in the cave of Macpalla that the patriarchs of the faith would want to be placed there? I don't fully know. But the story basically starts out in the book of Genesis in chapter 23:19, verse 19, and it says, "After this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Macpella before Mamre. The same is Hebron in the land of Canaan. And the field and the cave that is therein were made sure unto Abraham for a possession of a burying place by the sons of Heth." Well, sooner or later, each of us has some particular place where we would like to be buried. So we usually put that in a document known as a will and last testament, or a last testament and will. This is my last declaration. This is what I want carried out. And so you pick the place where you're going to be buried. Why is it that the patriarchs of the faith would want to be buried collectively in the cave of Macpalla? There's a very, very deep reason behind that. So, Michael was referring earlier to the term mysticism, and I like to get in and study things related to mysticism. My understanding of the universe is not black and white. I see a lot of gray, and people that want to nail the issue down and say black and white, no, that doesn't exactly register with my thinking. So what do we have in the introduction to the Holy Grail, known as the Book of Radiance, known as the Zohar? What do we have that shows us about the cave of Macpalla? Well, in volume 3 of the no, this is actually 2, 3 says a little more, but not as effectively as what volume 2 pins down in the cave of Macpalla on some of the background on why this is such a holy location. But first of all, we have to understand why the Holy Grail would even touch on the subject. So the Zohar is, according to its own writings, an explanation in volume 2 of the 7 chambers in the Garden of Eden. And it goes on in an introductory page like this, with a description of the tree of life with the 10 Sephirot, the 10 radiances in the universe and in the human body, whereby you can communicate with the Almighty. And as Michael had talked about some of my introduction, what is the shortcut? The shortcut is to read the sacred letters. They carry a frequency and they penetrate directly through your mind down to your soul, through the DNA, or otherwise, and they unlock anything that may be resisting your divine communication with the Almighty. How is this possible? I don't know. How is it possible that you can read the barcode with a scanner and that information can be translated to a computer and then you know what your groceries cost? I don't know. That's done scientifically. But as the Aramaic and the sacred Hebrew are 7 levels deep, by reading each letter, you can go 7 levels with each letter, depending on what you're ready for. So as you read each of the letters, you're unlocking what? A word. And in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh. The book Gospel of John. So when you understand the word, now you come to the Hebrew term of binah, understanding. Okay, to understand the tree of life, and the Zohar explains this, there's only 2 dimensions really that we have to deal with. One is the tree of life reality, where there is divine order. And then there's the tree of knowledge and good and evil, where there's chaos. So the dark side rules in the area of chaos. So if you have a lot of chaos in your life, that's a good time to jump into the Zohar and read the sacred letters so that you can enter the tree of life reality. Oh, people ask me, well, John, I don't understand how I'm supposed to enter that. Do I need an amulet? Do I have to say a sacred word? No, you just have to read the sacred Aramaic or the sacred Hebrew, and it will unlock the gateway for you to enter the tree of life reality where chaos is not permitted. The Zohar is not just another book that provides information. As we scan Aramaic words and sentences, they convey mystical knowledge, profound spiritual influence, and positive energy into all areas of our lives. The Zohar is a life-enriching instrument that conveys the very same spiritual light that it describes in its pages. The act of looking at and learning from the Zohar allows us to assimilate the energy that is present in each and every letter. Quite simply, the words on these pages bring light to places of darkness. There are 7 chambers in the Garden of Eden. That is 7 levels or frequencies of spiritual energy. These 7 chambers correspond to 7 sephirot or dimensions. Though there are 10 sephirot in all, and these comprise all of reality, everything that we know is comprised in the 10 sephirot. They are divided, however, into 2 groups. The upper, Keter, Chakma, and Binah, and the lower 7, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Had, Yesod, and Malkut. Typically, the upper 3 have no real influence or sway over our physical world. They are above and beyond the boundaries of our cosmic neighborhood. The lower 7, and keep in mind 7, 7, 7, 7. I'm going to go heavy on 7 tonight. Directly affect our world. More than that, these 7 sephirot are like a holographic projector that projects the light of the Creator into a 3-dimensional hologram that we perceive as our universe. By the way, I'm reading from a book that was written in the 13th century. Because there are 7 light sources, it's not surprising that the number 7 appears again and again. 7 notes of music, 7 colors of the spectrum, 7 seas, 7 continents. Well, even though this particular version of the Holy Grail was written in the 13th century, the original Holy Grail was written long, long before that. But one of the greatest interpreters, one of the greatest scribes and rabbis, got a hold of it in ancient Spain and put it in booklet form. Why? So he could help people unlock the 10 sephirot, or basically the lower 7 Sephiroth, to find their way to the tree of life reality and then have direct communication with the Almighty. So what are these 7 Sephiroth that we talk about that are below Keter, Chakma, and Binah? Keter is the crown of knowledge. Chakma is wisdom. Binah is understanding. Those are your 3 Sephiroth on your tree of life in the Kabbalistic 10 Sephiroth. Now, the lower 7 are Da'at, which is knowledge, Zer Anpin, which is understanding the small face of the Almighty, Chesed, which is mercy, Gevurah, which is judgment, Tiferet, which is splendor, Netzach, which is eternity or victory, Had, which is glory, Yesod, which is the foundation, and Melchut is kingdom. So in the lower Sephiroth, in the lower 10 Sephiroth, as you begin to study and understand, you're acquiring knowledge on communication with the Almighty. You're acquiring mercy. You understand judgment. You're receiving the splendor of the Almighty's teachings and its explanation on how his creation operates. You're getting victory over the forces of chaos and beyond. You're getting a chance to look into the glory of the Almighty on the throne. You're establishing a foundation that cannot be shaken. And you're entering the kingdom. So I'm looking at a particular article that I pulled up on the internet on the cave of Macpalla and how this is, such a sacred location, not only to Jews, but to Christians and the Muslims. And, it stands as a testimony of faith. And this particular article is from www.bible.org. It says this: the town of Hebron, which is where the cave of Macpalla is physically located, Hebron being south of Jerusalem, not too far south, but south of Jerusalem. Hebron stands at a higher elevation than Jerusalem. Other than the Temple Mount itself, no other place remains as revered to the peoples whose hopes and faiths could not be more diverse. Few other places offer such a powerful lesson in faith for those of us still drawing a breath. This cave, however, is a grave. This cave is a grave. The buildings that cover the cave of Macpalla, the Bible refers to as the burial ground for the Hebrew patriarchs and their wives. In the 1st century before Christ, Herod the Great constructed a massive wall around the cave, a beautiful edifice with construction techniques similar to those of the Temple Mount. As with Jerusalem's western wall tunnel, the massive size of the foundation stones surrounding Macpalla inspires awe to all of them who see them. With Herod's signature relief framing the edges, each stone sits slightly offset from the one beneath it, providing the optical illusion of both loftiness and grandeur. Inside the wall, the pavement also dates to Herod's day. As centuries passed, the 4 sides of the structure would include portices, and a partition divided the different faiths that came to visit. The Augustinian canons rediscovered the cave of Macpalla before Herod's structure in AD 1119. For a time, anyone could visit the underground area, but by the end of the 13th century, no one from the general public was allowed in the cave. And then I went and I said, well, okay, I hadn't seen some of the latest YouTube videos on the cave of Macpalla, so I pulled up a YouTube video, and I saw something very interesting. It was only about 3 minutes long, and a young Jewish fella was in Hebron, Israel, and he was at the entrance to the cave of Macpalla. And of course, the cave of Macpalla is deep underground because in ancient days, you've got to go underground to discover where these people live. So this gentleman is at the entrance to the cave of Macpalla, which looks like a lotus flower done in concrete. And in the middle of this lotus flower, there's this screening, it looks like, done with marble or porcelain. And he bows down to this particular screening that's probably a little bit bigger than a basketball. And he claims he can smell the air from heaven itself. So he says when he leans down to smell the air coming up from the cave of Macpalla, he says he can smell heaven. So the air, according to his beliefs, the air according to Jewish beliefs, coming from the cave of Macpalla is directly connected to the Garden of Eden. So as this young man now makes his sacred pilgrimage and he goes to the cave of Macpalla, the second holiest site on the planet in Judaism, some say it's the third holiest site, but I believe in Judaism, those that claim it's the second most holy site understand really, what is happening there. So can you actually make a connection with the Garden of Eden? And the answer is yes. And these were some of the stories that I used to hear from my Essene rabbi teacher, Emmanuel Bronner, who spoke fluent Hebrew, some Aramaic, fluent German, fluent English, and I'm trying to think of maybe another language. But, just to listen to the stories that were passed down, and it was just incredible. So I'm going to go into a little bit of the first chamber in the Garden of Eden, and keep in mind that there are 7 chambers. I don't have time to go through the 7 chambers here, but at least I'm going to touch on what the Zohar, the Holy Grail, says about this first chamber. The Zohar explains that in the first chamber, the souls of the converts enter and stand to behold the divine splendor. 3 times a day, they are illuminated by divine light. The Zohar explains directly from the Hebrew, in this case, the Aramaic. The first chamber below was created in the likeness of that which is above. That is the Sepharad Yesod within Malkut. So I would have to describe some of these words in the Hebrew. And so I read your description of the Hebrew terms earlier. Malkut would be kingdom, and Yesod and the Sephirah are your 10 levels of frequency to achieve communication with the Almighty. So I'll try to convert the Hebrew terms into English as I'm reading this to you so that we can just keep going. But this particular chamber, this first chamber, sets itself to correspond to a term of understanding or a frequency of understanding. So the Zohar says it's already been explained that a law of the Garden of Eden states that all of its aspects are exactly the same as those in the divine secret of understanding. Although the aspect of kingdom, of the attribute of judgment, is not noticeable there. It is not visible to the eye because the essence of kingdom is stored deep within and cannot be seen. The attribute of mercy can be seen, but only by the souls of the righteous. Such souls are engraved on above and below. Reaching completion from both understanding and kingdom, they are able to attain the essence of kingdom. Furthermore, through kingdom, they are able to behold the secret of their master and to enjoy divine bliss. Are we talking about a dimensional shift? Well, absolutely. Are we talking about several different layers of a dimensional shift? Yeah, absolutely. So in the Hebrew, when you refer to the patriarchs of the faith, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, if you really have a knowledge of what Abraham was capable of doing, because he had the complete text of the Zohar, he had the teachings, and he had teachers, by the way, who were interdimensional. He was able to, if you can conceive it, if you have both your feet on the ground right now, he was able to complete his own angelic friends. So the Sefer Yetzirah describes this on what Abraham was able to do because he was a very, very high elevated soul. There was a very sacred reason why Abraham made his way from Ur of the Chaldees west. He was on a mission, he had a calling from the Almighty, and he fulfilled that calling. But in the process, he performed the miraculous. And he was many times directly visited by angels, and many times he was supplied divinely by the Almighty, and so he had these abilities. And the question is, how did he have these abilities? Well, he had the knowledge. He was rooted in the kingdom. And by having this very elevated knowledge, and of course, he would know about the Essenes or the predecessors to the Essenes. He had friends in very high places that would pass knowledge, receive knowledge, share knowledge with them. And of course, he was built up to the point where he became a very wealthy man. And for very specific reasons, he was chosen to be the patriarch of the faith by the Almighty because he chose to completely dedicate himself to the Almighty. The Almighty was on his mind day and night. And this is something, of course, that all of us need to learn. And this is something that'll elevate all of our frequencies. So the cave of Macpalla is a place where you have an interdimensional portal to this Garden of Eden, and you have the patriarchs of the faith buried, and you ask yourself, okay, this cave is still in existence today. So, all right, so I'm correlating that to some of Hamid Bey's knowledge, and then I'm reading through Egypt's master voice, and I'm saying, there are other places that are still around today, and they are sacred sites, and there are areas of these sacred sites that have interdimensional portals. And here I go with my gray thinking. I don't like to go black and white. I like to be able to go into the gray. I know some of the Hebrew. One of the Hebrew phrases after prayer is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, which interpreted is, blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe. What is universe? Ha'olam. What is heaven? Olam haba. So there's that term in there, olam. What do you see a lot of Hamid Bey talking about? The universe. The universe is one. Dr. Browner has on every single label, on every single bottle of soap, Essene teachings from Rabbi Hillel. And all the way through, he says, we're all one. His belief was, we're all one. We're all connected. Whether you realize it or not, we are all connected. So he just kept saying, we're all on one starship Earth, and we have to get it right. We're all riding on the same starship. If we can't get along with each other, let's at least just try. This is coming from a man whose parents were taken out in Auschwitz. So in the teachings of the Cave of Macpalla, we have other sacred sites that people can go to. And maybe something happens to those people when they go to these sacred sites. I know what happened to me when I went to Sedona. I'm not even going to try to explain that. But there was a reason that I was called to Sedona. There was a reason that I went to Sedona. And when I arrived there, I had no idea I was going to stay there for close to a year. But I was probably 23, 24 years old, which was a long time ago. And I became a roofer, and I began to know some of the people. And then I began to learn about some of the sacred areas around Sedona. And then when I set foot on some of those sacred areas, then certain things happened. I can't share that. Just like I can't share what happens, when I'm reading the sacred Aramaic or the sacred Hebrew in the Zohar. See, the Zohar teaches you don't need a priest, you don't need a pastor, you don't need a guide, You don't need a rabbi. You don't need a medicine man. You don't need an imam. You don't need a Gurkha leading you up through the Himalayas. It's direct connect. This is why this type of knowledge has been taken away for so many centuries, because it takes away the power that a place like the Vatican would want to pull to itself, or it takes away the power from other people that they say, well, we have the divine teachings. Zohar's not concerned about that. Why do I say sacred Aramaic? Why do I say sacred Hebrew? Well, for all practical purposes, Aramaic was the language of commerce. So if you traveled from Israel and you got in your boat and you went west to my home country, Italy, and you had some pasta and some wine, and then from there you booked on over to Ireland and you went into the mines over there and you got to see the tin extracted, and who knows, you met some Irish dancers, and you came back through the Mediterranean. Okay, wow, you were speaking Aramaic. It was a language of commerce. Well, then we have Hebrew, and then we have Paleo-Hebrew. We have the Hebrew before the Hebrew that goes in some of the sacred texts. So which is the most sacred language? Well, that's a good question, because Hebrew is very, very close to the Aramaic, and Aramaic is very, very close to the Hebrew. However, if you just read the letters, because the letters carry the frequency of that particular language, then you're getting the barcode unlocked. This is why nobody wants the Zohar circulated that's in a position of power. It takes away their power. It gives you the opportunity to enter the tree of life reality for yourself. You get the self-authentication that nobody else can give you. This is why the Holy Grail is known as the Holy Grail. It self-authenticates with you alone, whether you're reading it in a cave, on a boat sailing across the Mediterranean, in an airplane blasting at Mach 5. All you have to do, if you read the book, you get the self-authentication. If you don't read the book, you don't get the self-authentication. So it's a very, very special book. You can see I'm very much dedicated to it. It's not the only book that I'm dedicated to reading, but let me not go too far off the beaten path in this talk about the Cave of Macpalla. But why do we have places like the Cave of Macpalla? Because they allow us to touch the divine. Now, a long time ago, I came across two books, and I'm trying to find them. They came from one of the underground places that puts out esoteric knowledge in Hawaii. And the name of the book was Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 series. And I used to have these books in my possession. Lo and behold, I can't find them. And in the Voyager 1, Voyager 2 series, you have someone that did a diagram of planet Earth, and where all the vertical columns of frequency communication are located, and which particular columns have the broadest pillar, you might say, that shoots straight up to the heavens for divine communication. Whether or not each of these pillars of light are describing the Jacob's ladder, where angels used to ascend and descend and visit with Jacob, I don't know. But as I was speaking to the rabbi last week, Rabbi Khrushchev down there in Grand Rapids, the teaching in the scriptures is there's a heavenly Jerusalem and then there's an earthly Jerusalem. Well, the heavenly Jerusalem is just above the earthly Jerusalem. They're separate because the heavenly Jerusalem is in a higher dimension. Well, how do you get there? Well, that's a very good question. So we have the earthly Jerusalem, and then we have the heavenly Jerusalem. And in this particular place on the planet, the most powerful column of light to connect to the Almighty on every other place in the planet is in Jerusalem. Now, I spotted other columns of light in the Voyager book series where you had this divine communication. So you had a pillar of light in Egypt, you have a pillar of light in Sedona, You had a pillar of light in some of these other countries, and these were sacred sites. Well, what are we talking about in understanding the cave of Macpalla and the meaning for the sacred sites and why these people are still with us whose bodies have not decomposed? Would I have the capability before I wrote my last will and testament, and I would say, leave my body alone, it's going to be okay? Holy smokes. You would have that level of insight? Leave my body alone because I'm going to put it in a state of suspended animation. Guess what? It's not going to decompose. Interesting. I've read a lot of last testaments and wills. I haven't had anybody put that language in there. Leave me alone because my body's not going to decompose. Everybody who passes by is going to get a chance to visit. Oh, that's another teaching. That they decided to keep their bodies here in a state of suspended animation or whatever, so that if you were resonating at such a frequency, you could drop by and visit great-great-great-grandpa, great-great-great-grandma. Oh, wait a minute. No, we don't want to talk about that. Such things, is it capable? Is it reality? Is it not reality? Well, I guess if you're resonating at that frequency, you have a chance to find out. And then to you, it's self-authenticating. So once the event occurs and it's self-authenticating to you, you don't need anybody else to talk you out of what happened. It happened. And so then that's what you need to believe, okay? Seven Sephirat. Our understanding of Olam Haba. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, melech ha'olam. The kingdom of the universe, melech ha'olam. The universe is something that Hamid Bey teaches, and in the Egypt's master voice, he keeps coming up 7 sections of this, 7 sections of that, 7 parallels, 7 dimensions, 7 steps. Here we're going to go into 7 in book number 5 and touch this. The connection between Jesus Christ and the Great Pyramid. 1, the Master Mason. 2, the Astronomical Master. 3, the Astrological Master. 4, the Golden Master. 5, the Sensation Master. That's described as the master of consciousness, resonating power, who stays with the body. 6, the Silver Master, the master of memory or records. 7, the Christ consciousness. The 7th master is present in spirit. He is the body that is lying in the sarcophagus. When the Great Pyramid has been closed in the direction of the Master Mason and the body has been placed as indicated, the 7 masters take up their proper positions and remain for 6 days in meditation. Gosh, I wonder if they eat potato chips. 6 days in meditation. Anybody got a Coca-Cola for him? The Golden Master, as we have said, enters into a special chamber, which we know to be above the King's chamber, although it has not actually been discovered. Is it in a higher dimension? I don't know. It's not actually been discovered. But we know it's there. Hamid Bey says it's there. In this particular chamber is kept the golden cap, which at the time of the ceremony is placed on top of the pyramid. And it's something that's on the dollar bill. And we may add that this cap has remained hidden for a long period of time. The cap symbolizes the superconsciousness or spirituality of man. According to ancient records, gold symbolizes God. While the master of sensation stays with the body, the silver master enters into a great hall of records, which symbolizes the subconscious mind of man. This only gets better. As soon as this is done, this ceremony is now further described in Book 5 of Egypt's Master Voice. The silk covering which has enveloped the Great Pyramid since the beginning of the ritual is taken off. All the burning torches are extinguished, and the multitudes return to their homes, for the soul of man has been received into heaven. But as the people retire into the darkness of the night, a flame burns in the heart of each, carrying the hope that someday there may be sufficient illumination for the soul to leave the darkness of this earth and dwell in the real eternal light. 7. Now that the initiation has been completed, the 6 masters descend with the body of the 7th into the great archive chamber, there to begin its preservation. We have previously told you that no mummies have been found in the Great Pyramid, and the reason for this becomes evident when we tell you further that the masters understood the art of petrification. This special form of preservation is used for the bodies of those whose spirits have passed into heaven through the golden cap. However, it requires 3 years to petrify the body, and the 6 masters remain within the pyramid for that length of time. During this period, they do not leave the monument for any purpose whatsoever. Food and water are brought to them through a secret passage of which only the master mason knows. We are now going to draw the veil of mystery still further from the Great Pyramid by telling you how our Coptic leader, Hamid Bey, was admitted into the monument in the year 1936. As you may know, Hamid Bey retains his 7 rings of mastership only by returning to Egypt every 7 years. 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, and these going through additional tests and examinations. In this way, his master satisfies himself that Hamid Bey is living in accordance with the true philosophy and is worthy to continue teaching his fellow man. The 7 rings signify that he has complete control of the body, complete control of the emotions, philosophical learning, and a knowledge of life that enables him to apply what he knows in daily activities. When Hamid Bey went through the customary initiation in the year 1936 and received back his 7 rings, he saw a smile of extraordinary tenderness and regard upon the face of his master in the Coptic temple. The great man spoke to him with the utmost gentleness and affection and impressed once more upon his mind the sacredness of the duty entrusted him. He expressed the wish that Hamid Bey should continue as in the past, uncontaminated by selfish desires and overindulgence in the material things of this world. They talked then about America and the people there, and Hamid Bey perceived a great love going out from the heart of his master toward the people of this country. Then our leader received an unspoken message directly from the spirit of his master, which presaged a great and glorious future for America. Hamid Bey began to grow conscious that the master had a wonderful reward in store for him. The goodness of his master seemed to concentrate as though in a magic way, and the goodness approached Hamid Bey. Hamid Bey lost cognition then of his physical body and his immediate mental self and seemed to float. Hamid Bey seemed to float through nothingness into a world of dreams. Is that gray? Is that gray area or is that black and white? In this new world, however, he retained his consciousness and perceived near him a strange presence. Surrounding him were bodies made of a substance that was not material substance and mysteriously invulnerable. Of all this, Hamid Bey was keenly aware, although he was not employing ordinary sensory perception. He talked, yet did not talk with his voice. He saw, but did not see with his eyes. He moved forward without walking, and he understood a new consciousness. Is he in a higher dimension? I don't know. Maybe he had too much Kool-Aid. In brief, he had entered into a realm of reflection. Then he perceived that the presences about him were willing and eager to take him somewhere. The Coptic master with whom he was speaking was also with him, and he began to wonder as to the significance of these strange events. As his wonder crystallized into a definite desire to know, he found himself being taken through mysterious channels. The purpose and reason back of all action became clear to him. This is what the Zohar teaches. All action in the universe is governed by the 10 Sephiroth. I keep seeing these connections between the Sephiroth, Hamid Bey, between the White Brotherhood and the Essenes. I keep seeing these connections. Must be something wrong with me. I'll change my coffee and see if this changes. As though I'm detached from it, Hamid Bey could see the world and the reason for its existence. He could see multitudes of human beings going, apparently nowhere. Yet he knew that their movement was not aimless. He was aware they progressed in a definite direction. He was conscious of their pains and their suffering and saw that their progress was made tortuously slow by pitfalls and by detours. These people were like blind dolls crushing themselves against a wall. Hamid said, "What strange world am I in? Where am I?" Then the combined voices of the mental bodies surrounding him seemed to answer, "You are in the secret depths of the human records." With these words, his orientation was made known, and he had realized at that time he entered into the Great Pyramid and was in a strange chamber which he had never known to exist. Isn't that something? People talk about walking into the cave of Macpalla, and at the end of the cave is this portal to a place known as the Garden of Eden. And the cave of Macpalla is still here on the planet. Oh, what do you know? And the Great Pyramid, well, it's still here on the planet. Oh, wait a minute. And there's chambers in these places? Oh, and they're still here? Oh, why? Why are they still here? With these words, his orientation was made known. Opening off the chamber were small antechambers in which were numerous ancient utensils, such as tools and jars in the center of the room, and there was a great body. And between the doors of the antechambers, there were cave-like niches, and in each one of these niches, there stood a human body. The body he was looking at was made of stone. Hamid Bey found himself drawn to one particular niche. And as he gazed, he came to the realization he was looking upon the last body of the Christ. Overcome with the greatness of this privilege that had been given him, Hamid Bey was immediately filled with the desire to share with his fellow men the wondrous knowledge that had come to him. And this desire took him back to his previous state. He found himself once more with his Coptic master in the chamber of initiation and began at once to implore confirmation of what he had seen. Placing a hand upon his shoulder, the master replied, "My beloved, this is not a dream. All is real. Your mind has not conceived anything that is not." Hamid Bey then began bombarding the priest with further questions and was told that Jesus the Christ had been the last master to go through the great initiation that we have described and enter into heaven through the golden cap placed on the top of the Great Pyramid. The body had been sealed within the monument and petrified by the 6 attending masters. Therefore, Hamid Bey was right in his conviction that he had beheld the actual body of the Messiah. As you can imagine, dear student, this revelation was indeed a wonderful thing to Hamid Bey. It afforded him glorious testimony that he might offer to all mankind, testimony that the Messiah had truly possessed the Christ consciousness. For as we have learned, only masters with this high attainment can go through with the ritual in front of the Sphinx and pass then into the Great Pyramid, where the celestial initiation is complete. Also, our Coptic leader now had tangible proof that Christ had come to Egypt after the crucifixion, and there lived for 214 years, selecting and teaching who? Who are these guys? The 7 guardians of the truth, leaving them to transmit his doctrines to posterity. This priceless philosophy, as we know, is destined to bring forth a light of truth that will unite humanity and put an end to needless suffering and chaos. Where's chaos? It's in the reality known as the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Chaos is not in the tree of life reality. A further revelation. Before the interview terminated, Hamid Bey's master revealed to him a thing of great significance regarding the future. Here we go. Here's what John Davis has been working for all these years. America is to be the next Holy Land, and it is here that the Christ consciousness will reincarnate. Preparation must be made for this great event, and that is why the Coptic Fellowship of America has been established. It is the mission of Hamid Bey and his fellow workers to stimulate people so that they will intelligently and voluntarily concentrate upon self-development and be ready to receive the fresh enlightenment that the next Messiah will offer. And there you go. Why is the cave of Macpalla still here? So that you know it's real. So that you know these people actually walk the planet. Why is the body of the Christ in a higher chamber in the Great Pyramid? So that you know he actually walked the planet. There is no question in your mind then, because what you have seen has self-authenticated to you the reality of the event. And at the same time, we have these places on dear planet Earth where these records or these frequencies or these locations or these caves or these buildings or these pyramids still exist. For some strange reason, the Almighty has chosen and has operated all forces in his universe to preserve the cave of Macpalla even to this day, over 3,000 years later, to preserve the Great Pyramid to this day, to preserve other places to this day. Why? Why? So that you know that the people that are there actually walk the planet, and they followed the teachings of the Essenes, and they followed the teachings of the Coptics, and they said, you know, if it's gonna be, it's up to me. I can't chase the rabbi down the road. I can't find the magic priest that'll give me the secret amulet that will unlock everything. I gotta do it myself. I've got to live a righteous life. Jesus the Christ said, if your righteousness does not exceed that of the rabbis, you will by no means enter heaven. How does your righteousness exceed theirs? Can their righteousness be obtained only through knowledge? No. There's something called initiations. And in these particular initiations, it's only you that can pass the test. And so it's a Coptic teaching that it boils down to, it's only you. Where are you going to end up? Well, that's entirely up to you. So the cave of Macpalla to me, and the study of the cave of Macpalla and the teachings that were handed to me so gently and kindly around the fireplace in Southern California with Dr. Bronner and Gladys Bronner, his wife, they're very, very special. How these correlate directly to the Essenes, the White Brotherhoods, and the Coptic, to me, it's a direct connection. But to know even in this day and era that we still have these sacred locations and we still have the caves and the pyramids is an a very, very powerful message that all of us should receive. They're here. They're here. And you can make connection with these sacred people that pass their initiations and let you know that your walk has to be pure, that your prayer has to be pure, that your heart has to be pure, that discipline is involved. That if you're going to be the Sadikim in the Hebrew, the righteous, that it ain't an easy road to hoe. It's going to take effort. And there you go. It's going to take effort. Every day I might say, well, it's going to take effort to sit down, open the Holy Grail and read it. Okay. It's going to take effort. It's going to take effort to go through some of the exercises in Egypt's master voice that do so much for me. Okay, I'm going to have to do it. All right. Well, what happens if I don't do it? Well, then you don't get the benefit. So when you do, though, follow the teachings and you do come to the point where you have a chance to pass an initiation, and then what happens after the initiation? There's more initiations. And as you ascend into this higher level of awareness, you begin to understand that being a human being is more than just walking in the flesh. And so the cave of Macpalla, the great pyramid teachings, the eternal ones that are preserved where their bodies haven't decayed, whether they've been petrified or not, are here for a reason. They're more than a physical example. There is a reason their bodies are still here. So I ask you to reflect on that. I ask you to pursue that. I thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to convey this. I hope I haven't inundated too many people too quickly. But anyways, I keep seeing these direct connections between the Coptics, the Essenes, the Holy Grail, the Lord Jesus Christ. I keep seeing these connections, and I'm excited about it. So for any of you that want to go and delve deeper into this, you don't have to buy the 23 volumes. You can actually, there's one volume, I think, or several volumes on a CD. So whereas 10, 15 years ago, the 23 volumes used to be $1,500, I've managed to get a couple sets for around $300, $350, and have them delivered to the house. I'd be willing to donate a set to the Coptic Center, but we have difficulties right now because the Coptic Center is not exactly open. But nonetheless, the Zohar can be obtained on a $50 CD-ROM. And so you have a chance to see the sacred Aramaic and then the English explanation right below it. And when you read those letters, I'm going to tell you something happens. And I'm going to tell you, when you go to sacred sites, if you're tuned in, something happens. And guess what? Only you find out. So it's up to you to go. It's up to you to take the first step. So thank you, everybody, for putting up with me. May the Lord bless you and keep you.
Thank you, John. Enlightening and very, very interesting how it's all tied in together. We all are one, really. And who's the gatekeeper of the cave these days? Is it something that's within Israel? Is it guarded? Is it the actual physical cave these days? The entrance.
Well, they do have.
Is it a secret?
Yeah, I don't believe you're going to. The cave is sealed off, so I don't believe you're going to journey down into an area where you have a chance to see the bodies of the patriarchs, whether they're in this dimension or a higher dimension. They're there, but I don't believe you can go to the cave and you can actually see the entrance to the cave. I'm honored with some friends that have relatives in Jerusalem and around Jerusalem, and when they want to connect with their great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers, guess what? They get on a ladder and they go 3 stories underground. And guess what? The writings of great-great-grandpa are on papyrus or on sheepskin wrapped up in a jar, and nobody can tell them that great-great-grandpa or great-great-grandma wasn't there because they're reading their writings. This is why a lot of people stay in the same area of Jerusalem and follow the path of their ancestors, because guess what? Their writings are 3 stories beneath them underground. So I think probably the cave of Macpalla would be at least 3 stories underground, because it goes back several thousand years. And, and over time, the earth is covered with more and more meteoric dust, and earth gets bigger every year with meteoric dust. And so to find ancient civilizations, and Laura Joy would more know about this. She's an archaeologist. You got to dig, right, Laura Joy? You got to dig down.
Yep.
Thank you, John. I appreciate all your intellect and wisdom and knowledge of this topic. Fantastic.